Chapter 1748. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked out of the sect master's quarters and returned to Di Beichen's place. Both of them were in a very good mood. This was the result that they had hoped to see, and it did not disappoint them. "Wife, I never thought that you would really be master's granddaughter. I suddenly feel that all of this has been arranged by the heavens." A joyful smile appeared on Di Beichen's handsome face. Under the golden rays of the sun, his smile sparkled. From the time he had gone to Fengbo country and fell in love with Hongzhuang, to now that they had stayed in Tiangang's sect and discovered the connection between his master and Hongzhuang, as long as there was a problem in all of this, it would be impossible for Hongzhuang and his master to acknowledge each other. However, despite so many problems, they had still managed to make it one step at a time. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a gentle and beautiful smile. "That's right, all of this is a little unbelievable." Now, her emotions were even more profound than Di Beichen's. She felt that even the matter of her transmigration might have been arranged by the heavens. Otherwise, Bailey Hongzhuang would have died long ago and all of this would have been lost. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand, his eyes filled with deep affection and gentleness. "Wife, let's get married after we rescue my in-laws. What do you think?" He loved Hongzhuang too much and only wished that he could tell everyone that Hongzhuang was his wife. Furthermore, there was still Mo Yunjue eyeing them covetously from the side. He had to quickly declare his sovereignty. Looking at Di Beichen's passionate and sincere look, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile. However, she thought for a while and said, "We still don't know if my parents are satisfied with you. If they aren't, then we don't know. I'm so outstanding, how could my in-laws not be satisfied?" Di Beichen raised his handsome brows and his incomparably handsome face was filled with confidence. "Don't shout so happily. It's not time yet." Bailey Hongzhuang glared at Di Beichen, but the smile in her eyes deepened. "You are my wife. Naturally, they are my father-in-law and mother-in-law. Do you still want to deny it?" Di Beichen narrowed his eyes and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang threateningly. He wouldn't give his wife any chance to escape. "That depends on whether you treat me well or not. If you don't treat me well." The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a delicate and proud smile. She let go of Di Beichen's hand and walked into the house. However, the moment Bailey Hongzhuang entered the room, Di Beichen followed her. Dong! Di Beichen pressed one hand against the wall and locked Bailey Hongzhuang in his arms. The corners of his lips curled into a devilish and seductive smile. "Wife, what did you just say?" "I said, Before Bailey Hongzhuang could say anything, Di Beichen's handsome face quickly enlarged in front of her eyes. His warm breath hit her face and she felt a warm touch on her lips. Di Beichen kissed Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. The rich sweetness made it hard for him to extricate himself. After a while, Di Beichen looked at the blushing Bailey Hongzhuang and asked, "Wife, are you still going to run?" "Run, Bailey Hongzhuang had only uttered a single syllable when Di Beichen kissed her again. It seemed that his wife didn't know the consequences of saying such things. Bailey Hongzhuang felt her heart pounding and her face burning. She felt dizzy. Chapter 1749. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen in front of her. His handsome face was like a blooming epiphyllum, and his beautiful lips were slightly raised into a seductive and sexy arc. A pair of deep, pitch-black eyes flickered with a bright and resplendent light, as dazzling as glass. And in those eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang saw deep affection and banter. Obviously, Di Beichen was deliberately teasing her. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen indignantly. Di Beichen was forcing her to do this. The situation just now was very good proof of this point. If she dared to say the word "run" again, Di Beichen would definitely punish her in the same way again. After thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang could only admit defeat. "I won't run." Bailey Hongzhuang pursed her lips and said. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's blushing little face and only felt that she was even more charming. At this moment, her small mouth was pursed, and the lips that he had kissed were slightly red and swollen, looking even more sparkling and seductive. Looking at Hong Zhuang like this, Di Beichen only felt that it was really tempting to commit a crime. In the next moment, under Bailey Hong Zhuang's astonished gaze, Di Beichen's lips covered hers again. Bailey Hong Zhuang stared at Di Beichen with her eyes wide open. There was only one thought in her mind: Di Beichen is a liar. Di Beichen's kiss was warm and gentle, and Bailey Hong Zhuang was also immersed in Di Beichen's kiss. Until Di Beichen let go of Bailey Hong Zhuang blushed and said, "You're shameless, I already said that I won't run, you still." Di Beichen stared at Bailey Hong Zhuang and said with a smile, "My wife is too seductive, your husband can't control himself." Following Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hong Zhuang's face quickly turned red, and only felt that her ears and face were boiling hot. You. In the face of Di Beichen's straightforward words, she really didn't know what to say. Di Beichen's eyes were fixed on Bailey Hong Zhuang's body. Facing such a lovely wife, he really felt that his entire heart was full. "My wife, you're so cute." Di Beichen's face was full of smiles. Hong Zhuang usually looked orderly and could deal with anything, but as long as he flirted with her, Hong Zhuang could only be captured without putting up a fight. Such a wife was really cute. Bailey Hong Zhuang wrinkled her little nose and angrily glared at Di Beichen, like a little wife who had been wronged. "You only know how to act shamelessly." "I didn't." Di Beichen spread out his hands, looking innocent and natural. "Flirting with my wife is my husband's responsibility." "You." Bailey Hong Zhuang looked at Di Beichen with shame and indignation. The guy in front of her was clearly a shameless person. Di Beichen winked at Bailey Hong Zhuang, but the devilish smile on his lips gradually widened. Bailey Hong Zhuang felt a wave of frustration. In this aspect, she really wasn't Di Beichen's opponent. At this moment, there was a knock on the door outside the house. "Young master." Hei Mu stood outside the house with the three beasts and called out. Hearing Hei Mu's voice, Di Beichen said, "Come in." Creak. The door opened, and Hei Mu and the three beasts walked in together. "Young master, there's a letter for you." Hei Mu handed a letter to Di Beichen. This letter was from Shirtian Pavilion. Previously, young master had told him that if Shirtian Pavilion had a reply, he must give it to young master as soon as possible. Chapter 1750. After Hei Mu handed the letter to Di Beichen, his gaze, like the three beasties, stopped on Bailey Hong Zhuang's face. They saw that Bailey Hong Zhuang's face was unnaturally red, and it had yet to fade. They could even smell the unusual ambiguity in the air. It seemed that they had come at the wrong time. Hei Mu's expression was a little awkward. He didn't want to disturb the young master and young madam. His gaze couldn't help but fall on Di Beichen. Hei Mu looked at the young master carefully, hoping that the young master wouldn't be angry because of his interruption. Otherwise, he would. The three beasties also looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang ambiguously. Other than when Di Beichen was around, they had never seen their master blush. Obviously, something unusual must have happened just now. Their master's lips also seemed to be more swollen than usual. Thinking of this, the three beasties couldn't help but laugh. He. Noticing the three beasties' mischievous smiles, Bailey Hong Zhuang's expression was awkward. However, she still pretended to be serious and stared at the three beasties. Faced with Bailey Hong Zhuang's pretense, the three beasties didn't fall for it at all. Just looking at their master's blushing face, this seriousness was no longer intimidating. Seeing this, Bailey Hong Zhuang felt even more helpless. It's over. Her image is completely ruined. Thinking of this, Bailey Hong Zhuang couldn't help but stare at Di Beichen. However, Di Beichen's expression was natural, as if nothing had happened. At this moment, Bailey Hong Zhuang really couldn't help but admire Di Beichen's thick skin. No matter what this man did in the last second, he could always quickly return to normal in the next second, as if nothing had happened. On the other hand, her expression had already exposed everything. It seemed that her skin still needed more training. You guys can leave first. Baichen's expression was indifferent and calm as he glanced at Mu. Yes. Mu hurriedly responded. After knowing that he had disturbed the young master and young madam, he couldn't wait to leave. Now that he heard the young master's words, he felt a burst of joy. However, the three beasts were somewhat unwilling to leave. On the one hand, they were very curious about the outcome of their master's visit to the sect leader's chamber. On the other hand, it was rare for them to have the opportunity to laugh at their master, so they didn't want to miss it. The expressions of the three beasties did not escape Baichen's eyes. Baichen continued, "Bring Baisher and the rest to try our Tiangang sect specialty dishes." As soon as this was said, the three beasts' faces were immediately dyed with a touch of excitement. Delicious, delicious. This was their greatest hobby. They still don't know what special dishes Tiangang sect has, but such a big sect, its special dishes must not be bad. In the next instant, the three beasts leaped onto Mu's body. They looked like they couldn't wait for Mu to take them away. Seeing the speed at which the three beasts changed their expressions, Bailey Hongzhuang felt helpless. Baichen had completely grasped the lifeblood of the three beasts. Using food to bribe them was definitely not wrong. Yes. Mu bowed respectfully and immediately led the three beasts out. After the door was closed, Mu couldn't help but sigh in relief. Chapter 1751. After Mu and the others left, Bailey Hongzhuang supported her head with one hand, her eyes locked on Baichen's face. "My wife, do you think that your husband is too handsome, so you can't take your eyes off me?" Baichen's lips curled into an evil and charming smile. His starry eyes also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. "I'm thinking, how did you train your thick skin?" When she first met Baichen, she should have known that this man's strength in this aspect was shocking. And now, as she understood more and more, her feelings also became more and more profound. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's helpless expression, the smile in Baichen's eyes gradually deepened. He moved closer to Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "My wife, do you want to know?" "Yes." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Baichen blinked his charming eyes. His expression was serious and seductive. This also requires talent. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but break down. Such a man seriously told her that being thick-skinned also required talent. This was really not shameful, but proud. Baichen looked at the letter in his hand. His incomparably handsome face put away the joking expression, and a touch of seriousness appeared. Noticing the change in Baichen's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask, "Whose letter is it?" "Shirtian Tower." Baichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression also changed a little. She knew that Baichen had issued a task to Shirtian Tower. Presumably, this was Mo Yunjue's reply. Baichen opened the letter and looked at the contents of the letter. The content was very simple. There were only 2 words, "as soon as possible." Baichen was not surprised when he saw the content. He had already guessed Mo Yunjue's answer. However, from the words "as soon as possible," it could be seen that Mo Yunjue was serious about this matter. Normally, Shirtian Pavilion's response was not like this. Presumably, Mo Yunjue had already sent cultivators to investigate this matter as soon as possible. With the information network of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion, once they sped up, it would not take long for them to find out the results of the investigation. Bailey Hongzhuang also saw the contents of the letter. It was Mo Yunjue's handwriting. She couldn't help but feel touched. All this time, Baichen had helped her a lot, but she had never done anything for Mo Yunjue. Now, Mo Yunjue was still helping her investigate the location of her parents' imprisonment. She must thank Mo Yunjue properly in the future. However, she also knew that her gratitude was meaningless. She only hoped that Mo Yunjue could find his happiness. Shirtian Pavilion has already accepted this task. I think it won't be long before we know the answer. Di Beichen said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. The Yu clan has kept this information extremely secret. Even if Shirtian Pavilion investigates, I'm afraid it will be difficult to find out in a short time. After she and her grandfather recognized each other, she felt more and more that Yu Xiqing was a terrifying woman. With Yu Xiqing's meticulous and vicious character, the location of her imprisonment must be extremely secretive. It would be extremely difficult to find it. However, she was still full of confidence in Shirtian Pavilion. With Shirtian Pavilion's ability, they will definitely find out. I will inform Master later. We should also prepare early. Chapter 1752. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Okay. Currently, they only had one goal, and that was to rescue her parents. Recalling how she had been all alone in the past and how she now had so many helpers, her heart was filled with emotion. The Yu family. In a dark and dirty dungeon. Two figures were imprisoned by crosses and their hands and feet were cuffed in chains. Their clothes were in a sorry state and the bloodstains on their bodies had already turned black, emitting an unpleasant smell. Their hair was disheveled and mixed with sweat that scattered on their faces, making it difficult to see them clearly. However, if one looked carefully, they would notice that the man and woman's appearances were extremely outstanding. Despite their sorry state and pale complexions, it still couldn't conceal their peerless charm. Dong dong dong. A voice came from above. When they heard this voice, the two of them opened their eyes. Their indifferent expressions were filled with disgust. A yellow figure appeared before the two of them. It was Yu Xiqing. Yu Xiqing slowly walked to them with a sinister and cold smile on her face. Mu Lingbing, your father came to find me a few days ago. Hearing this, the imprisoned woman's expression couldn't help but change. She coldly looked at Yu Xiqing but didn't say anything. This abominable woman would torment her and Yun Xiao whenever she was unhappy all these years. After so many years, she had gradually gotten used to it. Even the pain in her body couldn't withstand her numb heart. Normally, no matter how Yu Xiqing provoked her, she wouldn't have any reaction. However, after hearing news about her father, she couldn't help but be moved. Lan Yunxiao looked at Yu Xiqing with a deep gaze. This despicable and vicious woman. If possible, he really wanted to kill her. Noticing Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's hateful gazes, Yu Xiqing's smile gradually widened. She just loved to see Mu Lingbing's pained expression. Don't look at me like that. This is all Mu Jin's fault. If she hadn't given birth to you, you wouldn't have fallen into my hands and gotten injured. Yu Xiqing chuckled and turned to look at Lan Yunxiao. Lan Yunxiao, you're really pitiful. If you hadn't married Mu Lingbing, you would still be the Lan family's glorious patriarch. How could you have fallen to such a state? Mu Lingbing couldn't help but look at Lan Yunxiao, her pitch-black eyes filled with guilt. Over the years, she had always regretted that she had dragged Yun Xiao down. If it weren't for her, how could Yun Xiao have fallen to such a state? Originally, she had thought that all of this was an undeserved calamity that had occurred out of nowhere. However, it was only after she had been imprisoned by Yu Xiqing that she realized that all of this was a plot against her. Yu Xiqing, don't speak nonsense. A hoarse and deep voice rang out. The prolonged dryness caused the voice to sound exceptionally ear-piercing. Lan Yunxiao coldly looked at Yu Xiqing. This woman would always say things from time to time to break their hearts. Once they were defeated, that was what Yu Xiqing wanted to see the most. However, he would not let Yu Xiqing succeed. From the beginning to the end, he had never regretted being together with Ling Bing. He also didn't feel that Ling Bing had dragged him down. Even if he could start over again, he would still choose to be with Ling Bing. However, if he could start over again, he wouldn't let Ling Bing suffer like this again. Chapter 1753. Lan Yunxiao looked at Mu Lingbing. He didn't say anything, but his eyes said it all. From start to finish, he had never regretted it. Mu Lingbing's eyes sparkled when she met Lan Yunxiao's gaze. She couldn't remember how many years they had been imprisoned here, but it was an incomparably long time. But from start to finish, Lan Yunxiao had never shown the slightest bit of regret. Even after enduring all this torture, Lan Yunxiao still loved her deeply. She, Mu Lingbing, truly felt that being able to be with Lan Yunxiao in this lifetime was her greatest happiness. When Yu Siqing saw how deeply in love Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were, her eyes couldn't help but darken. Hatred rose in her heart. She didn't understand what was so good about Mu Jin's that could make Si Tuyen yearn for her all these years. And now, her daughter was the same as her. There was clearly nothing good about her, but Lan Yunxiao was so deeply in love with her. An indescribable feeling of unwillingness spread in her heart. She wanted to destroy all of this. Si Tuyen came to ask me if you were his daughter. Yu Siqing's lips curled up. Ever since that incident, she hadn't seen Si Tuyen again. She didn't expect to see him again a few days ago. His facial features hadn't changed much from before, but they were dyed with the vicissitudes of life and added a bit of maturity. The man she used to like so much was stolen away by that slut, Mu Jin's. She was the one who liked Si Tuyen first, but now they were together. She couldn't accept it. As long as she wanted something, she would never allow it to be taken away by others. She would rather destroy everything than watch them live happily ever after. She wanted Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's to know that it was their biggest mistake to fall in love with each other. Mu Lingbing's gaze changed as it locked onto Yu Siqing. She had always thought she was an orphan and didn't know who her birth parents were. She had been raised by her master since she was young. Her master had always been very good to her and treated her like her own daughter. She also treated her master as her family. It wasn't until she was imprisoned by Yu Siqing that she learned about her past from Yu Siqing. So, master was her mother. She didn't believe Yu Siqing's words at first, but after Yu Siqing told her about the grudge between her and her master, she felt that it might be true. After so many years, she had already confirmed that this was the truth. She had never thought that her father would be the sect master of Tiangang sect. It turned out that she wasn't an orphan at all. Her mother had always been by her side. It was only because of some grievances and misunderstandings that they didn't get together. She vaguely remembered that sometimes, her master would stare at a place in a daze, his expression lonely and sad. His master had always been outstanding, and she had countless suitors. However, ever since she was young, she had never seen her master walk in with any man. It wasn't until she was imprisoned that she realized that there was someone else in her master's heart. Yu Siqing did not hide what had happened back then from them. Instead, she spoke of it in a nostalgic manner. She finally understood that her father and mother had separated because of a misunderstanding, and all of this was because of Yu Siqing. His mother's sadness and loneliness for so many years was unnecessary. Chapter 1754. To Mu Lingbing, she had never hated a woman so bitterly and never thought that a woman could be so vicious. Mu Jin's is truly foolish to have left just like that. She hasn't seen Si Tuyen for so many years. However, I want them to continue with this misunderstanding and regret for the rest of their lives. That's the situation I want to see the most. Yu Siqing's smile grew even more malevolent. After so many years, Si Tuyen had only just found out that he had a daughter. Come to think of it, this wasn't just the typical feeling of regret and sorrow. Back then, Si Tuyen had caused her so much grief and now, she was finally returning it all to him. However, this wasn't enough. She was only halfway through. In the coming days, she wanted Si Tuyen to be filled with endless regret and even shed tears of regret in front of her. She was stronger than Mu Jin's in every way. You're too despicable. Mu Lingbing's gaze was cold and disdainful as she stared at Yu Siqing. She had never seen such a deranged woman. She felt that this woman had been possessed and had put all her energy and time into revenge. Seeing them suffer was the happiest thing for Yusiching. I'm despicable. Yusiching raised her voice and her expression grew even more malevolent and agitated. Mu Jin's is the despicable one. I've already told her that Situ Yen is my sweetheart. She clearly knew that, yet she still wanted to steal my sweetheart. If she's not despicable, then what is? Yusiching was furious. She hated women like Mu Jin's who pretended to be innocent the most. Then do you think it's all good for you to do such a thing to your friend? Lan Yunxiao's eyes were gloomy and cold. This woman in front of him had been blinded by hatred. However, he could also see Yusiching's feelings for the sect master. Otherwise, Yusiching wouldn't still be alone after so many years. She wouldn't have put all her energy into this matter. However, when he thought about it carefully, regardless of whether it was his father-in-law, mother-in-law, or Yusiching, they had never walked out of this relationship. In reality, there was no such thing as snatching or not snatching. Even if his mother-in-law didn't exist, his father-in-law didn't like Yusiching, and this fact wouldn't change. It was just that Yusiching wasn't willing to admit it. However, this woman was so deranged and vicious that no man would like her. Friend? Yusiching sneered, I've never treated her as a friend. I saw that Situ Yen was interested in Mu Jinsei, so I wanted to get closer to Situ Yen. However, Mu Jin's actually dared to be together with Situ Yen. This woman is destined to pay the price. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao were speechless after hearing Yusiching's words. This woman was simply unreasonable. She was clearly the one in the wrong from the beginning to the end, but she wanted to push all the blame onto someone else. How laughable. Since Situ Yen knows that you are her daughter, do you think he will come to save you? Yusiching's lips curled into a playful smile. This game was getting more and more fun. Ever since she left Tiangang's sect, Situ Yen had never appeared in front of her again. From now on, she believed that Situ Yen would constantly appear in front of her. Chapter 1755. Mu Lingbing's eyes lit up. If her father could really come and save her, would she have a chance to see the light of day again? She had been locked up in the dungeon for more than a decade and her life was worse than death. However, she and Yun Xiao had never given up because there was still a trace of obsession in their hearts. They were very clear that the possibility of leaving this place was extremely small, but they were still unwilling to give up. A miracle was a possibility within the impossible. Even if their persistence was meaningless, they still couldn't give up. Back then, they had left their infant daughter in Fengbo country. At that time, she had been so weak. Now, they didn't know how their daughter was doing. Thinking of this, they felt abnormally anxious. Noticing the change in Mu Lingbing's expression, the smile in Yusiching's eyes deepened. Ha, after so many years, you still haven't given up. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao only coldly stared at Yusiching. I'll tell you the truth. I've fed you many poisons these years. If I wasn't here, you would only have a path to death. Yusiching pitifully looked at Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao, feeling that these two fellows were really pitiful. Who told them to fall into her hands? Once they fell into her hands, they were destined to have a tragic ending. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's eyes darkened and their hearts couldn't help but sink. All these years, Yusiching had completely treated them as Xiaobai mice for her experiments. Every time Yusiching developed a special poison, she would let them try it. Under the influence of various poisons, they suffered unspeakably. Their greatest wish in this life was to be able to see each other again. If they hadn't taken good care of Yi Xian back then, giving Lan Jingquang and his family an opportunity, Yi Xian wouldn't have fallen into such a state. This was the regret of their lives. As her parents, they didn't take good care of Yi Xian and instead allowed her to fall into such danger. This was originally something that Yi Xian shouldn't have to endure and was the greatest pain in their lives. Even though they had already thought of all sorts of methods back then, they didn't know if Yi Xian could survive. However, they didn't let anyone know of this news. With Yu Siqing's deranged nature, if she learned of this matter, it would be difficult for Yi Xian to escape this calamity. In reality, they were more worried that Yi Xian had already perished more than 10 years ago. At that time, Yi Xian was merely an infant in swaddling clothes. Having her dantian forcefully broken open by someone, this could be said to be a fatal injury. Sometimes, they felt that they might not be able to get out, but they still had a glimmer of hope in their hearts. Prepare to die here for the rest of your lives. Ha ha ha. Yu Siqing gave Mu Lingbing a mocking look before leaving the dungeon. She was looking forward to how things would unfold. After Yu Siqing left, Mu Lingbing's heart sank to the bottom. This woman is really abnormal. Seeing Mu Lingbing's disheartened appearance, Lan Yunxiao comforted her. Lingbing, don't mind what she said. She just wants to see us disappointed and in pain. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing nodded. Even though she had been tortured by Yu Siqing, she was not willing to let her have her way. Chapter 1756. No matter what, the situation has taken a turn for the better. The sect master knows of your identity. A smile spread across Lan Yunxiao's pale and handsome face. Lingbing had once regretted not knowing about her biological parents, but now she knew everything. Since the sect master had come to find Yu Siqing to confirm this matter, it proved that he was certain of it. As long as the sect master continued to investigate, this matter would gradually become clear. Perhaps the misunderstanding between the sect master and his mother-in-law could be resolved. Mu Lingbing nodded slightly. Her dark eyes were sparkling. At least her father finally knew of her existence. Yun Xiao, do you think Yishuan is still alive? Mu Lingbing raised her head to look at Lan Yunxiao, her pale and beautiful face filled with helplessness. She no longer cared about what would happen to her in the future. She was only worried that she would never have the chance to see her daughter again. From Yishuan's birth until now, they had only been together for a few short months. As a mother, she really owed her too much. Lan Yunxiao's deep and dark eyes flickered with determination. Our daughter is so strong. She will definitely live on. Although Lan Yunxiao's gaze was resolute, his tightly knitted brows still reflected his worry. Seeing Lan Yunxiao's determined appearance, Mu Lingbing's eyes brightened. Yes, she definitely will. In this life, they had failed to fulfill their responsibilities as parents. They only hoped that they could repay Yishuan in their next life. Lingbing, no matter what, we must persevere. Perhaps there will be a day when we see Yishuan again. Lan Yunxiao's gaze was deep and his voice was deep and powerful. After so many years of torture, they had persevered by relying on the conviction in their hearts. Not only did he want to see Yishuan again, but he also wanted the unconcealable hatred in his heart. Lan Jing was mad. The big brother he once respected and thought of as a good brother had done such a thing behind his back. When they got married, he had vowed to take good care of Lingbing. However, he had allowed his wife and daughter to fall into such a situation. All of this was because he had wrongly trusted others. It was his fault. He wouldn't allow himself to die like this. He hated them so much. If there was a day when he left this place, he would definitely return everything to them. If he couldn't do this, he wouldn't be able to die in peace. He once boasted that he was a distinguished and talented man who looked down on all the genius cultivators. However, the truth was that he couldn't even take good care of his own wife and daughter. The family that had supported him in the beginning had chosen to betray him after he encountered such a situation. This was the greatest pain in Lan Yunxiao's life. If you don't experience this, you will never understand how painful, hateful, and infuriating this kind of betrayal is. He was unwilling. Unwilling. Therefore, he would not give up. He would not give up until the moment of his death. After Bewitching told Si Tu Yen that the Heavenly Slaughter Pavilion had accepted the mission, Si Tu Yen was also a little surprised. Logically speaking, Shirtian Pavilion would not accept such a mission. As for why he had accepted it this time, he did not delve into it. From Bechen's confident attitude back then, it was obvious that there must be a reason that he did not know. Chapter 1757. At night. The three beasties returned to Bailey Hongzhuang's house. He Mu had brought them to eat a delicious meal earlier, and now, they felt extraordinarily satisfied. Burp, Baisha rubbed its round belly and burped. Today's meal was extraordinarily satisfying. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also looked satisfied. If they could live like this every day, how comfortable would that be? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the three beasties helplessly. These three fellows were really gluttons. No matter what the situation was, as long as they were eating, they would immediately be revived. Master, Tiangang sect's food and wine are also very delicious. Xiao He's eyes shone with excitement. They would be staying in Tiangang sect for the next few days, and this was really something to be happy about. Just by looking at Xiao He's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang already understood its thoughts. She immediately reached out a finger and poked Xiao He's head. In the future, your food problems will be solved by He Mu. I believe you will be very happy. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. This was the result of her discussion with Bechen. The three beasties usually liked to follow He Mu, and He Mu already had a certain understanding of these three gluttons. If the three beasties' food problems were handed over to He Mu would probably be able to complete the task very well. Bailey Hongzhuang had already noticed that Baisha's body was constantly growing, and it probably needed a lot of nutrition and food. As a beast king, it was normal for Baisha to be able to eat. In Tiangang sect, there were also some cultivators who had their own contract beasts, so there was a lot of food for contract beasts. She was looking forward to Baisha's appearance when he grew up. As for Xiao He and Xiao Bai, they had always been very gluttonous. Their ability to eat was not directly proportional to their body size. For this point, Bailey Hongzhuang could also understand. After all, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were not small after they grew up. Moreover, after the three beasts found out that she was going to rescue her parents, they had been working extremely hard on their cultivation. Although the three beasties seemed to have nothing else to care about other than eating, in reality, they were most concerned about her. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, the three beasties all nodded excitedly, yes. Blackwood was the easiest to bully. Every time they followed Blackwood to eat, they didn't feel any burden at all. Seeing this, the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips became even brighter. Master, have you confirmed your relationship with the sect leader? Xiao Bai moved closer to Bailey Hongzhuang. This was the question that they were most concerned about. It was only because Bechen had asked them to leave that they left. Of course, eating was also very important. The three beasties widened their eyes and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang curiously. Long before they returned to Tiangang sect, they were very surprised when they found out about Bechen's conjecture. Logically speaking, it was impossible for things to be so coincidental. However, after hearing this from Bechen, they felt more confident. The sect leader is my grandfather. Bailey Hongzhuang replied to the three beasties' questions. The three beasties were stunned when they heard this. They stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze, unable to recover from their shock for a moment. The sect leader is your grandfather? Xiao He asked again with uncertainty. Chapter 1758. That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Xiao He sucked in a breath of cold air, but her eyes gradually brightened. In that case, doesn't Master have a huge backer like the Tiangang sect leader? Xiao He couldn't hide the excitement on her face. She realized that good news came one after another recently. Previously, she was still worried about Master's revenge. She didn't expect Master to become the successor of Wuji Palace and now the granddaughter of the Tiangang sect leader. Her identity was rising steadily. This is good news. Xiao Bai was equally excited. Let's see who still dares to say that Master came from a remote place. That bunch of blind fellows. Although Bailey Hongzhuang didn't care about the comments of some cultivators in Tiangang sect, she couldn't bear to listen to it. Since Master and Di Beichen appeared together in Tiangang sect 2 years ago, there were all kinds of versions of the story. Many cultivators were rumored that Master used seductive means to get Di Beichen to be with her. Thinking of this, she was furious. She never felt that Master was worse than Di Beichen. The two of them were originally in love. Only those annoying fellows would say such things. Now that Master's identity was so powerful, these rumors could vanish like smoke. That's great. Baisher waved his little paws excitedly. Congratulations on reuniting with grandfather, Master. The three beasts spoke at the same time. Based on their understanding of Master, she wasn't the happiest about the change in her identity, but about reuniting with her family. Sect leader, this was the first relative that Master had reuniting with. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile gradually widened. This matter really made her happy. Master, since sect leader is really your grandfather, then all the previous grudges can be confirmed. All of this was Yu Siqing's doing. After a moment of joy, Xiao He couldn't help but frown. The person who turned Master's family upside down was Yu Siqing. If that was the case, how terrifying was this woman? His deep phoenix eyes were filled with a cold light. That's right, the root of all this is Yu Siqing. If it wasn't for Yu Siqing, this wouldn't have happened. Damn, this woman is too hateful. He's simply inhuman. Xiao Bai could not hide the anger on her face. This woman's scheming was simply shocking. If I don't kill this despicable woman, I'll be letting myself down. Bai Shi was also furious. Just because of his own selfish desires, not only had Si Tuyen and Mu Jin's been separated for so many years due to a misunderstanding, he had even ruined Mu Lingbing's life. This woman was truly insane. It won't be long before I make her wish she was dead. Bailey Hongzhuang gradually clenched her fists under her sleeves. The viciousness in her eyes gradually deepened. A strong anger and resentment burned and spread in her heart. If she didn't kill this woman with her own hands, she would never be satisfied. The three beasts nodded in unison. Their eyes were filled with hatred. Once they had to face Yu Siqing head-on, not only their master, but they would also make a move to vent their anger. Master, since your maternal grandfather and parents already know, where is your maternal grandmother? Chapter 1759. Hearing Baisher's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with doubt. This was also something that she couldn't understand. They had already received news about her parents, but there was no news about her grandmother. According to Di Beichen's investigation, Mu Lingbing had appeared in public as an orphan in her early years and had been raised by the palace master of the Sun Moon Palace. This experience was exactly the same as Di Beichen's. However, they had not received any news about her grandmother. In the hearts of Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, there was a faint worry. They were only worried that their grandmother had been persecuted by Yu Siqing after she left. After all, Yu Siqing was so deranged. Since she knew that Mu Lingbing was Mu Jin's daughter, she would naturally know about Mu Jin's whereabouts. Perhaps Yu Siqing had already made her move against Mu Jin's. Mu Jin's did not have any powerful backing and could not be compared to Yu Siqing of the Yu family. If she had really met with danger a long time ago, it was something that they did not wish to see. Perhaps Yu Siqing had already harmed her years ago. Xiao Hei's eyes darkened. If Mu Lingbing's mother was still alive, Mu Jin's would not have remained indifferent to the torment that Mu Lingbing had suffered all these years. She would definitely have done something. However, they had not received any news. Just from this point alone, they were able to deduce many things. I hope that's not the case. Xiao Bai sighed faintly. Although it felt that the possibility of this was very high, it hoped that it was not the case from the bottom of its heart. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the three beasts with a complicated expression. When we capture Yu Siqing in the future, we will know everything. Regarding all this, they did not have any useful information. They could only wait until they had slaughtered the Yu family to understand everything. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasts nodded. In the following days, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's lives returned to normal. The two of them spent most of their time in the training room because the density of the elemental energy here was much higher than outside. Cultivating here, their speed of improvement was extremely fast. Usually, Di Beichen would spend most of his time in the training room as long as he did not have anything to do. Bailey Hongzhuang was also a cultivation maniac. She only hoped that she could increase her strength as quickly as possible. This way, she would be able to get closer to the day she wanted to achieve her goal. After understanding Bailey Hongzhuang's training, Di Beichen understood how Hongzhuang had improved in the past 2 years of the great competition, with Yu Yang, Yu, with Yu Xiqing, Yu. On this day, when Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at the training room, she saw that Di Beichen was already cultivating. A faint smile appeared on her delicate and perfect face. Di Beichen was able to reach this stage not only because of his talent and resources, but also because of his hard work. Every time she saw Di Beichen cultivating seriously, she always felt that this kind of Di Beichen was exceptionally charming. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang appear, Di Beichen's face lit up with a doting smile. "My wife, you're here." Chapter 1760. In a few more days, Gong Shaoqing and the rest will be reporting to Tiangang sect. Di Beichen smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang. Recently, Hongzhuang had been staying in her sleeping quarters and had not left at all. Thinking about it, on one hand, it was because of the rumors in the sect. On the other hand, it was because there were no familiar faces in the sect. Although Hongzhuang had never expressed it, he could understand. Now, the cultivators in Tiangang sect had many guesses about Hongzhuang. However, he could not stop everyone's guesses. If he forcefully gave the order, it would only make the situation worse. Therefore, they could only wait for the other cultivators to arrive and Hongzhuang would slowly change everyone's minds. He believed that with Hongzhuang's ability, it would not be a problem for her to do all this. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. "Yes, time passes very quickly. I haven't seen them for a while, and I really miss them." Di Beichen stroked Bailey Hongzhuang's silky smooth hair and his smile became even more affectionate. This period of time with Hongzhuang had been peaceful and wonderful to him. As long as he could see Hongzhuang's figure every day, he would feel very happy. Bailey Hongzhuang leaned on Di Beichen's shoulder and a complicated light flashed in her ink-black phoenix eyes. She had never told anyone about the Chaos Ring because it was simply too mysterious and its effects were unusually powerful. If such a divine weapon were to be found out by others, it was very likely that it would bring about a fatal disaster for her. Therefore, for so long, she had never told anyone about the Chaos Ring. The three beasts also kept their mouths shut. They were all too aware of the principle that an innocent man would get into trouble for possessing a jade ring. Now, she increasingly felt that the experience in the Door of Darkness was very helpful in increasing her power. Originally, Di Beichen had asked her to stay in the cultivation room to cultivate at night. This way, it would be more convenient for her to cultivate and she would not need to run back and forth. However, she still returned to her own room at night. Not for anything else, but to cultivate in the Door of Darkness. With the help of the Door of Darkness, Bailey Hongzhuang's speed of improvement was extremely fast. Even Di Beichen was amazed. She pondered for a long time whether or not she should tell Di Beichen the news. It was not that she did not trust Di Beichen, it was just that no matter how many vows she made, they were all defeated in the face of benefits. In the Xingxian continent, this kind of thing was not rare. On the contrary, it was very common. Even if it was a couple who had a good relationship, after meeting a treasure, they might have their own thoughts and go against each other. The Chaos Ring was such a heaven-defying artifact. Once word got out, it would have a huge impact. However, after much consideration, Bailey Hongzhuang finally decided to tell Di Beichen about this matter. This was because she believed that the relationship between her and Di Beichen was strong enough, and it was not something that could be destroyed by personal interests. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, "Beichen, there's something I want to tell you." Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's deep thoughts, Di Beichen's expression became more serious. His gentle gaze focused on Bailey Hongzhuang as he said, "Wife, please speak. Your husband is all ears." Seeing Di Beichen's serious expression, the corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips rose slightly, forming a beautiful arc. "Actually, there's something I've never told you," Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. Chapter 1761. When she said this, an idea suddenly emerged in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. Actually, she wasn't the real Bailey Hongzhuang. She didn't know if she should tell Di Beichen about this. Most people would think that there was something wrong with her head if they heard her say this. Most people wouldn't believe her. However, to her, Di Beichen was someone she could trust. Actually, she didn't want to hide anything from Di Beichen. When Di Beichen noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's heavy mood, he couldn't help but put his right hand on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. He didn't know what was wrong with Hongzhuang today. Why did she have such a complicated expression on her face? Logically speaking, nothing should have happened to Hongzhuang recently. "Wifey, no matter what happens, your husband will always stand by your side." Di Beichen's voice was low and powerful. In his heart, no one could compare to Hongzhuang. No matter what happened, he would always stand by Hongzhuang's side. No matter if Hongzhuang was right or wrong. In his heart, Hongzhuang was right. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart trembled slightly. A feeling called being moved spread through her heart. That's right. From the first time they met until now, Di Beichen had always been like what he said. He would always stand by her side. No matter what happened, he had never doubted her. Even when the palace master and the elders were against it, he still persisted. During the assessment, he didn't hesitate to let everyone know that she was the woman he loved deeply. Facing Di Beichen like this, what did she have to worry about? "Beichen, I've always had a secret." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. To her, this was a huge secret. Di Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang quietly. He didn't know what Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to say, but he knew that no matter what Hongzhuang said, it wouldn't affect them at all. "Beichen, aren't you curious? I was bullied in the general's residence for so many years, and I've always been a good-for-nothing who couldn't cultivate. Why would I suddenly be able to cultivate one day? And why would I change so much from before?" Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen. Her transformation back then was a mystery to many people. No one knew how she managed to achieve such a transformation. No matter how others investigated, there would be no results. Hearing this, Di Beichen's starry eyes flashed, but he didn't answer. He didn't know the answer to this. When he first met Hongzhuang, he had asked He Mu to investigate her, but the results of the investigation were as if the eldest miss of the general's residence had suddenly changed overnight. No one knew how her eyes had healed, no one knew why she could suddenly cultivate, and no one knew why her cultivation had reached such a high level. All of these things were linked together to form an incomprehensible mystery. They could only think that Bailey Hongzhuang had always been in disguise. She had deliberately pretended all this in order to cancel her engagement with Xian Yuanhuan. Other than this, they couldn't find any other reason. But when they thought of this reason, they still couldn't find an explanation. Chapter 1762. After Di Beichen failed to investigate this point, he did not pay much attention to it. To him, the most important thing was Bailey Hongzhuang. As for other things, they were not that important. Now that he heard Hongzhuang mention this point, he could not help but feel a little surprised. From Hongzhuang's tone, he felt that this matter was not simple at all. "Wife, if you're willing to tell me, I'm naturally willing to listen. If you're not willing to talk about this matter, I won't care." Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with concern. His warm and broad palm held Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder, silently giving Bailey Hongzhuang strength. For some reason, after seeing Hongzhuang's expression and attitude, he felt a little worried. He rarely saw Hongzhuang reveal such a serious expression. He only felt that Hongzhuang was struggling when she decided to talk about this matter. He did not want to give Hongzhuang any pressure. He only hoped that Hongzhuang could be happy. Looking at Di Beichen's concerned look, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt a little relieved. Since she had already said this, she did not intend to continue hiding it. Beichen, actually, I'm not the real Bailey Hongzhuang. When she said this, Di Beichen could not help but be stunned for a moment. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. For a moment, he doubted if he had heard wrongly or if he had misunderstood. Wife, what do you mean? Bailey Hongzhuang's words really made Beichen not know how to understand. Bailey Hongzhuang also knew Di Beichen's doubts and immediately continued to explain. Back then, when Bailey Hongzhuang committed suicide by swallowing gold, she had already died and completely disappeared from this world. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was somewhat emotional. If Lan Yunxiao and Mu Jins knew that their real daughter had already fallen, they would definitely be very pained. Back then, Bailey Hongzhuang had endured such pain and persevered. However, she had chosen to end her own life under the torture of the general's residence. In fact, apart from Di Beichen, she did not intend to tell anyone else about this matter. Di Beichen's handsome face was filled with shock. His eyes were gloomy and uncertain, and his expression was full of doubts. At that time, he had also heard that the eldest daughter of the general's mansion had committed suicide. It was said that because she couldn't bear the blow of Xian Yuanhuan's withdrawal of marriage, she chose to cry, make a fuss, and hang herself. At that time, she was laughed at by everyone. Most people thought that the eldest daughter of the general's mansion had made a fuss to win back Xian Yuanhuan's heart. He didn't know that the matter was so serious. Wife, if the previous Bailey Hongzhuang is already dead, then who are you? Di Beichen couldn't understand for a moment. Could it be that his wife was impersonating Bailey Hongzhuang? If that was the case, how could his wife know so much about Bailey Hongzhuang? This was a little too strange. Could it be that this was something that his wife had planned long ago? Even so, how could there be two people who looked exactly the same in this world? Although he knew that his wife's disguise technique was very powerful, he also knew that his wife's face wasn't a disguise. Then, what was this situation? Chapter 1763. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen's deep and enchanting eyes were filled with doubt and puzzlement. Hongzhuang's explanation made him even more confused. Her soul wasn't completely. This sounded too inconceivable. Actually, I'm a ghost from 1,000 years ago. I've crossed over to the present. Coincidentally, Bailey Hongzhuang had fallen, so my soul entered her body. Her beautiful and delicate face was filled with a faint smile, her bright and watery eyes staring at Di Beichen. She loved Di Beichen too much, she only hoped that there would be no secrets between them. After all, the memories of her past life had always existed in her mind. Sometimes, when she showed some strange talents, it would be inconvenient to hide them. Over time, she believed that Di Beichen's doubts would grow stronger. Instead of waiting until then, it would be better to tell Di Beichen everything now. When these words came out, Di Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze, his deep and spirited eyes revealing shock and emptiness. This news was simply too unbelievable. If the person who spoke was not Hongzhuang, he would definitely think that the other party was talking nonsense. However, seeing Hongzhuang's serious expression, he understood that Hongzhuang was definitely not joking with him. When he connected this point, he suddenly realized that everything could be linked together. Why did Hongzhuang have such a big change after swallowing gold and committing suicide? Why did Hongzhuang suddenly know medicine, disguise, and even alchemy? Why did Hongzhuang, clearly like Xian Yuanhuan before, suddenly have no feelings for Xian Yuanhuan at all? Previously, he didn't understand and only thought that Hong Zhuang might have an extremely mysterious master behind her. However, he and Hong Zhuang had been together for so long, he had never seen the existence of that master. Clearly, Hong Zhuang did not have any contact with anyone else. However, later on, he had always been together with Hong Zhuang, so he didn't think about these questions. Now that Hong Zhuang took the initiative to mention this point, he finally understood. Wife, you mean that you're a person from 1,000 years ago? Di Beichen couldn't help but ask again. Although Hong Zhuang had already explained it clearly, this news was too shocking. Even if it was a wandering soul from the same era, perhaps he could still understand. However, a wandering soul from 1,000 years ago, could it be that his wife had always existed in the form of a wandering soul for so many years? Di Beichen only felt that Hong Zhuang's words had really refreshed his understanding. Bailey Hong Zhuang nodded slightly, yes. So, you've been a wandering soul for the past 1,000 years? Di Beichen was somewhat puzzled. If the previous Bailey Hong Zhuang had fallen and his wife's soul could enter her body, then in the past 1,000 years, hadn't she entered other people's bodies? Seeing that Di Beichen was a little bit confused, Bailey Hong Zhuang couldn't help but shake her head. No. I only appeared after knowing the current year. The era I lived in was 1,000 years ago. In fact, 1,000 years ago, I fell because of an accident. When I woke up again, I had already become Bailey Hong Zhuang. As for why I appeared 1,000 years later and why I became Bailey Hong Zhuang, I'm not particularly clear. Chapter 1764. The power of the Chaos Ring was so great that it had created a spatial storm. She had then turned into Bailey Hong Zhuang. All of this had been caused by the Chaos Ring. As for why it had chosen Bailey Hong Zhuang, it was probably because they had coincidentally bumped into Bailey Hong Zhuang at that time. Sometimes, she felt that all of this had been predestined. After all, their names were exactly the same. This coincidence was far too rare. Hearing Bailey Hong Zhuang's explanation, Di Beichen finally understood. After his wife had fallen, her soul had directly entered Bailey Hong Zhuang's body. That was how all of this had happened. After I entered Bailey Hong Zhuang's body, I had also merged with her memories. Therefore, I can only say that the current me is a combination of my past life and Bailey Hong Zhuang's. Her soul had long been merged with the memories of these two lives. Therefore, both of them were her, but not completely her. Di Beichen was a little stunned. This news was far too shocking. He simply could not believe that something like this had actually happened. Bailey Hong Zhuang stared at Di Beichen. When she saw that Di Beichen had been staring at her in a daze without any reaction, her clear eyes could not help but fill with a trace of worry. She did not know if Di Beichen could accept all of this. She had been very conflicted before she had brought up this matter. Anyone who had heard of this matter would find it hard to believe. Even though this matter was very hard to believe, Di Beichen had quickly digested it and understood it. Di Beichen raised his eyes and saw the worry in Bailey Hong Zhuang's clear eyes. He immediately pulled Bailey Hong Zhuang into his arms. Her worry made his heart ache. He had never wanted Hong Zhuang to feel anxious because of him. Suddenly being pulled into Di Beichen's arms, Bailey Hong Zhuang was slightly stunned. The worry in her eyes gradually wavered. Di Beichen gently patted Bailey Hong Zhuang's back. His warm and mellow voice rang in Bailey Hong Zhuang's ears. My wife, no matter who you are, no matter if you're from 1,000 years ago or 1,000 years later, to me, you're still my wife. Your identity will not change anything. His warm and magnetic voice seemed to have a mysterious power, inexplicably calming Bailey Hong Zhuang's heart. Di Beichen's words put her heart down again, and Bailey Hong Zhuang's lips could not help but raise a happy smile. Her judgment was not wrong. Di Beichen would not care about these things. Even if Di Beichen knew the truth, it would not affect anything. As Di Beichen stroked Bailey Hong Zhuang's back, he suddenly thought of something. His eyes could not help but turn gloomy. Sensing Di Beichen's strange behavior, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but withdraw from his arms and look at Di Beichen. Di Beichen's face was as gloomy as water. His eyes, which were as deep as the sea, were now covered with dark clouds. His eyes were unreadable, making it impossible for anyone to see through his thoughts. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen and could not help but feel worried. Beichen, what's wrong with you? Does she still care about this after all? Di Beichen's hands suddenly grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. His eyes, which were as attractive as black holes, were fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. My wife, you weren't married in the past, were you? Chapter 1765. Looking at Di Beichen's nervous and perturbed look, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart, which had been hanging in the air again, calmed down. She felt that it was very funny. When she saw Di Beichen's dignified look earlier, she thought that it was something important. She did not expect that Di Beichen was actually thinking about her marriage. This man's concern was not the main point at all. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at Di Beichen. A sly look quietly appeared in her eyes. Usually, when Di Beichen teased her, she could not resist at all. Now, she finally had a chance to tease Di Beichen. If I say, I was married in the past, what will you do? Bailey Hongzhuang looked a little nervous. She looked at Di Beichen worriedly, as if it was difficult for her to speak. As soon as she said that, Di Beichen's face suddenly darkened. His eyes were even more oppressive and cold. Time seemed to have suddenly frozen. Only the sound of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's breathing could be heard in the room. It was indescribably oppressive. Di Beichen did not care about who Hongzhuang was in the past. The only thing he cared about was whether Hongzhuang had someone else in her heart. However, now that he knew that Hongzhuang was married in the past, didn't this mean that Hongzhuang also had a man she loved deeply in the past? At the thought of this, Di Beichen could not help but tighten his grip on Bailey Hongzhuang's arm. He never thought that something like this would happen. He only felt a stuffy feeling in his heart, which made him panic. No matter how serious his injuries were, he had never felt so uncomfortable. Bailey Hongzhuang felt a pain coming from her arm. Di Beichen had used too much strength. She only wanted to make a joke, but after seeing Di Beichen's dignified expression, she felt that her joke seemed to have gone too far. The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly spread into a smile. Her eyes were bright and full of color, blooming like stars in the sky. Beichen, are you jealous? Looking at the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, especially after seeing the sly look in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, how could Di Beichen, who was smart, not know that Hongzhuang did it on purpose? Wife, are you lying to me? Di Beichen raised his voice. What Hongzhuang had just said really shocked him. This unexpected situation happened too suddenly, completely out of her expectations. For a moment, he did not know what to do. He only felt a wave of pain. However, Hongzhuang was only teasing him. At the thought of this, Di Beichen's eyes became increasingly gloomy. His wife was becoming more and more disobedient. She actually dared to lie to him about this kind of thing. Hee hee. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. When she saw Di Beichen's face, which was as black as the bottom of a pot, she found it even more hilarious. Beichen, you're too cute, ha. She had never seen Di Beichen like this. It was simply too amusing. However, at the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang was deeply moved. Di Beichen did not care about anything else. The only thing he cared about was her feelings. This was really touching. However, when Di Beichen saw Bailey Hongzhuang's smiling face, he only felt that it was time to discipline Hongzhuang. She actually dared to lie to him about this kind of thing. In the next moment, Di Beichen exerted force with both hands and carried Bailey Hongzhuang to sit on his lap. Chapter 1766. The atmosphere became ambiguous in an instant. Bailey Hongzhuang's white face was instantly covered with a blush. The position in front of her was too ambiguous. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately wanted to go down, but Di Beichen's broad palm had been holding her slender waist. The strong and overbearing force did not allow her to leave. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him with a deep and penetrating gaze. His wife was getting more and more naughty. She even dared to make such a joke with him. He had to properly punish his wife. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen angrily. He was really bad. Knowing that she had no way to deal with such a situation, he deliberately used such a way to punish her. Let me down. Bailey Hongzhuang struggled. This kind of situation made her feel at a loss. Although she was extremely close to Di Beichen, this was the first time they were in such an ambiguous position. They were so close, separated only by a thin cloth. Faintly, she could feel the heat from Di Beichen, which made her feel helpless. Di Beichen originally just wanted to tease Bailey Hongzhuang, but after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's shy and helpless appearance, the desire in his heart immediately jumped up. At this moment, coupled with the constant twisting, he only felt that his body was about to explode. His wife was simply igniting fire everywhere. Di Beichen grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand and said, "Wife, if you continue to move like this, I can't guarantee what will happen next." When he opened his mouth, there was a hint of hoarseness. Di Beichen's eyes were instantly dyed with the light of desire. His eyes were blurred and domineering as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Last time, they were disturbed by Xia Jiqing and the others, but now, it was only them. Listening to Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood the meaning of Di Beichen, and immediately did not dare to move. Because she also felt that there was a change in Di Beichen's body, Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was smiling proudly and became an obedient kitten in a short time, and his lips could not help but raise a smile. "Wife, do you dare to tease me in the future?" Bailey Hongzhuang's face was so red that it could drip water. At this moment, when she saw Di Beichen's teasing look, she could not help but feel ashamed. Damn Di Beichen! Every time, I was defeated by his hands. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang pursing her lips and looking unwilling, Di Beichen's eyes gradually deepened. He raised his eyebrows and said, "It seems that the wife is still unwilling to admit defeat." The next moment, Di Beichen's figure suddenly moved. In the blink of an eye, Di Beichen had already carried Bailey Hongzhuang to the bed. At this moment, their posture was more ambiguous than before. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen with shame. At this moment, Di Beichen was already on top of her, and her legs were still separated. Di Beichen leaned forward, and the hot part was so close to her that she could not help but shiver. Although the last time she and Di Beichen had been in a state of delirium, after all, they had not reached this step. At this moment, when she was really in this situation, she knew how embarrassing it was. She only felt that her mind was blank, and she stared at Di Beichen, not knowing what to say. Chapter 1767. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang like this, Di Beichen could not hold back the excitement in his heart. He immediately kissed Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips. Her soft red lips were filled with an enchanting fragrance. Once he kissed her, he would be intoxicated. Di Beichen's kiss was wild and hot, with a trace of dominance and possessiveness. He searched for Bailey Hongzhuang's body and played with it. He was glad. He was glad that his wife had transmigrated into Bailey Hongzhuang's body. If not for that, everything that happened later would not have happened. His heart would still be so empty. There would not be a ray of warm sunlight shining on his heart like Hongzhuang. He was even more glad that his wife had not married in her previous life. There was no one else in her heart. Otherwise, it would be too difficult to completely defeat the person from 1,000 years ago in his wife's heart. Thinking of all these, Di Beichen wanted Bailey Hongzhuang even more. He wanted her. He wanted her crazily. Even though she was by his side now, he still felt a sense of crisis in his heart. The equally outstanding Mo Yunjue was watching covetously from the side. For Hong Zhuang's matter, Mo Yunjue was also giving his all. He did not mention this problem, but it did not mean that he was not worried. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were blurred. From the initial embarrassment to Di Beichen's kiss, the ambiguous atmosphere was spreading. Her body temperature was also rising. She responded to Di Beichen with a jerky but passionate response. From Di Beichen's kiss, she keenly felt a trace of worry and uneasiness. She did not know what had caused Di Beichen's uneasiness. To her, she only wanted Di Beichen to feel at ease. Feeling Bailey Hongzhuang's response, Di Beichen's kiss became more intense. From her red lips to Di Beichen's slender white neck. His warm breath sprayed on Bailey Hongzhuang's neck. She only felt her body go limp, as if she had no strength in her body. Fine and dense kisses fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Di Beichen's breathing became more rapid and heavy. His hands slowly reached into Bailey Hongzhuang's clothes. Feeling the delicate and tender skin, Bailey Hongzhuang's body ignited everywhere. Bailey Hongzhuang's little face flushed red. She could only let Di Beichen do what he wanted, but she did not know what to do. Di Beichen's hands seemed to have magic. Wherever his hands touched, the skin would emit an astonishing heat. Di Beichen only felt that every inch of Bailey Hongzhuang's skin had a fatal attraction to him. For so many years, he had been surrounded by many women, but none of them had ever moved his heart. Furthermore, he had always been a chaste person. Therefore, no woman had ever appeared by his side. There was only one woman that he could not restrain himself from, and that was his wife. 2 years ago, he had not been so thirsty. After not seeing Hong Zhuang for 2 years, he felt that he could not restrain himself anymore. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was at a loss of what to do, Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's little hand and put it into his clothes. When she touched Di Beichen's strong and smooth skin, Bailey Hongzhuang found that Di Beichen's body temperature was even hotter than hers. It was as if a flame was burning her palm. As Bailey Hongzhuang's soft and boneless little hand covered his chest, Di Beichen only felt that he had touched a piece of ice in the flame. He felt very comfortable. Chapter 1768. In the next moment, Di Beichen directly grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand and felt his scalding heat. When Bailey Hongzhuang realized what she was touching, she only felt a bang in her mind, and then there was only a blank space left. Although she didn't know much about the matters between men and women, she knew what this was. Following the touch of Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand, Di Beichen only felt that he was about to explode. This feeling was really killing him. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but close her eyes. Her face was so red that it was about to drip blood. She immediately tried to pull her hand away. Di Beichen had already guessed Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts. How could he allow her to pull her hand away? He held on tightly to Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, not allowing her to retreat even an inch. Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but call out softly. This situation was really too embarrassing. Di Beichen raised his eyes that were filled with lust. Those reddened eyes and the beads of sweat on his forehead showed that he was having a hard time holding himself back. Seeing Di Beichen like this, Bailey Hongzhuang's original words were stuck in her mouth and she didn't say anything. The moment Di Beichen's hand touched Bailey Hongzhuang's leg, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but tremble. That limp and numb feeling made her moan uncontrollably. And it was this sound that made Di Beichen, who was already unable to hold himself back, completely ignited. He reached his hand into Bailey Hongzhuang's skirt. He only felt that everything on his body was unnecessary. Beichen, I guessed that you were in the cultivation room. I heard that you had already brought your precious wife back from the assessment. But it's been so long, why didn't you let me see her? Isn't that too much? A carefree and sunny voice sounded from above the training room, followed by a series of movements. Hearing this sudden voice, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be surprised. She never thought that someone would appear at this time. From the looks of it, the other party seemed to be very familiar with this cultivation room. Judging from the commotion, it was clear that he was about to enter the cultivation room. Damn it! Bechen's voice was hoarse as he slammed his fist onto the edge of the bed. This guy just had to come at this time. She had disturbed him. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look at her and Bechen's disheveled and messy appearance. The other party was clearly coming down directly. What should they do if they saw him? Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately pushed Bechen. Her moist and blurry eyes were filled with nervousness and panic. What should we do? She had never encountered such a situation before and could not help but feel flustered. Bechen glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "Wen Ziren, I dare you to come down here right now." Wen Ziren was just about to enter the cultivation room in high spirits when he suddenly heard Bechen's shout. He could not help but be stunned for a moment. All along, Bechen's personality had been rather good. It was rare to see him so furious. Could it be that he had been dumped by his precious wife? Although Wen Ziren didn't quite understand, he still stopped himself from going downstairs. He and Bechen had been good friends for many years. Their masters were good friends as well. Hence, they had often cultivated together when they were young. Chapter 1769. Among the peers, he was the one who knew Bechen the best. Although everyone believed that Han Xiling and Bechen were a couple, as a good brother of Bechen, he knew very well that Bechen had no romantic feelings for Han Xiling. At the beginning, he also felt that Bechen was very strange. He was obviously very outstanding, and there were many outstanding women in Tiangang sect, but Bechen didn't like any of them. Until 2 years ago, when he learned from Bechen that Bechen already had a wife, he couldn't help but be stunned. He had known Bechen for so many years, and he had never seen Bechen fall in love with any woman. He even felt that if this continued, Bechen was likely to die alone. However, just when he didn't pay attention, Bechen had already married someone. This news was simply too shocking. However, as he and Bechen had an in-depth conversation, he found that Bechen was really trapped this time. As a good brother of Bechen, he naturally understood how his good brother's vision was. Therefore, he had always wanted to see Bechen's baby wife. At the beginning, this guy said that he would let him see after Bailey Hongzhuang was brought back, but he waited for so long without any movement, so he came to Tiangang sect. He was very familiar with Tiangang sect, and he was even more familiar with Bechen's palace. As long as this guy wasn't in his own room, he must be in the cultivation room, so he came without hesitation. However, why did this guy suddenly lose his temper at him now? After seeing that there was no movement upstairs, Bailey Hongzhuang was relieved. If someone saw her like this now, then she really had no face to see anyone. Bechen's face was gloomy and scary. Did this group of damn guys specially choose the time every time? Appearing at this critical moment, he was so depressed that he wanted to hit someone. Looking at the gloomy face of Bailey Hongzhuang, the originally flustered and nervous Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly couldn't help but laugh. Thinking about it, the most depressed person was Bechen. Previously, Bechen was out of control in order to punish her. She didn't expect that the person who was punished in the end was Bechen. Noticing that Bailey Hongzhuang's lips couldn't help but overflow a smile, Bechen's eyes, his wife was still in the mood to laugh now. Get up quickly. If you wait too long, others will be suspicious. Bailey Hongzhuang said. She didn't know who the other party was, but since the other party knew about the existence of the cultivation room, he must be very familiar with it. Who cares what he thinks? Bechen didn't care about this at all. Just looking at his little girl's complacent appearance, his heart felt stifled. In the next moment, Bechen once again covered Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Seeing Bechen's actions, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but panic. Now that the situation was like this, Bechen wouldn't continue, right? Thinking that there was another person above who could come down at any time, she couldn't help but feel anxious. Seeing that you're so proud, I'll give you a punishment. Di Beichen's hoarse and hot voice sounded in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a numbing sensation on her neck. Di Beichen directly pecked her. He had to let his wife know that it wouldn't be so easy to tease him in the future. Chapter 1770. My dear wife, this is punishment. Di Beichen smiled faintly, but the lust in his eyes had yet to dissipate. He was going to have a good spar with Xiren later. Otherwise, how was he going to vent his anger that had transformed from lust? Looking at Di Beichen's smirk, Bailey Hongzhuang understood what had happened. You scoundrel! Bailey Hongzhuang cried out angrily. Her little face was filled with shame and anger. She stretched out her little fist and was about to hit Di Beichen. It was the cool season now and the dress she was wearing was very thin. Her neck was completely exposed. Di Beichen had left a mark on her neck. How was she going to face anyone? These words coming out of Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth did not sound disgusted at all. On the contrary, it sounded more like a spoiled child. Di Beichen immediately grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's soft and seemingly boneless little hand. His body moved closer to her and he whispered into her ear, "Today, an untactful fellow has disturbed us. I promise that next time, I will not allow such an untactful fellow to appear." Once these words were spoken, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood the meaning behind Di Beichen's words. Her little face, which was already flushed red, was now filled with a blood-red hue. Di Beichen's words meant that next time. Tidy yourself up properly. You can't let that fellow's eyes take advantage of you. Di Beichen's face was gloomy. Obviously, the matter of being disturbed at such a crucial moment was not something that could be easily forgotten. Bailey Hongzhuang saw how petty Di Beichen was and the corners of her lips could not help but curl into a smile. Even though Di Beichen was so naughty that she could not stand up to him, at a time like this, he was really cute. While Bailey Hongzhuang was tidying up her clothes, Di Beichen began to circulate his cultivation method. If he did not do this, he would not be able to suppress his lust at all. However, the lust that had been suppressed for so long was obviously not something that could be eliminated so easily. He could only circulate his cultivation method over and over again. After Bailey Hongzhuang tidied herself up, she could not help but take out a mirror. She saw a bright red mark on her neck which was extremely eye-catching. Bailey Hongzhuang tried to use her hair to cover it. However, this position could only cover a small part of it. The slightest movement would expose it. Di Beichen did this on purpose. Bailey Hongzhuang was indignant. She didn't know when this imprint would disappear. It seems that she could only stay in the house for a while and not go out. Not long after Di Beichen calmed down, he and Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the cultivation room together. When Xiren was bored to death in the room. He did not understand what Di Beichen was doing and why he had not come up after so long. Under such circumstances, he could not resist the idea of opening the mechanism and walking into the cultivation room. Just as Xiren was about to enter the cultivation room, Di Beichen finally walked out. Seeing Di Beichen appear, Xiren could not help but ask, "Beichen, what are you doing in the cultivation room? Why did you take so long to come up?" Just as he finished speaking, when Xiren saw a beautiful and refined woman appear behind Di Beichen. Suddenly, when Xiren's attention fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. He had already heard that Di Beichen's wife was as beautiful as a fairy. He had always been curious. He did not know what kind of beauty could make Di Beichen so proud. Chapter 1771. When Xiren could not help but recall Di Beichen's angry voice from before. Could it be that his appearance had coincidentally disturbed Di Beichen's good time? At the thought of this, when Xiren's probing gaze could not help but shift back and forth between Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang. Feeling Xiren's ambiguous gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but feel a little guilty. Recalling everything that had happened in the cultivation room earlier, she felt her face blush and her heart beat faster. When Bailey Hongzhuang's head was slightly lowered, when Xiren immediately saw the mark on Bailey Hongzhuang's neck. Immediately, the smile in his eyes became even more complacent. He and Di Beichen had been good friends for so many years, but he had never seen Di Beichen so furious. He did not intentionally disturb them. Who asked Di Beichen to be so indecent in broad daylight? Noticing Xiren's smiling eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang felt as if when Xiren had seen through everything from before. What are you looking at? Di Beichen's face was calm and his voice was slightly cold. When Xiren sized up Di Beichen and smiled, looking at your dissatisfied expression, could it be that I've disturbed your good time and that's why you're so angry? Following when Xiren's words, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but cough. Who was this man in front of her? He really dared to say anything. She knew that he had seen through everything. Di Beichen's face darkened even more. When Xiren, I've recently learned a new martial technique. Come with me to the training field and we'll exchange pointers. Once these words came out, Xiren's face could not help but change. He hurriedly said, Di Beichen, you know that you're stronger than me. I've long stopped exchanging pointers with you. Di Beichen's talent in cultivation had always been enviable. Although he did not work as hard as Di Beichen in cultivation, to be honest, if they were to really fight, he really would not be a match for Di Beichen. You know that you won't exchange pointers with me and yet you dare to disturb my good time. Today, I must exchange pointers with you properly to practice. Di Beichen calmly walked out. He was almost depressed to death. The last time he was disturbed by Xia Jiqing and the others at the Kanglin College, this time he thought that there would be no such problem in his own palace. Who would have thought that a damn when Xiren would come out again? This guy did not appear earlier or later, he just had to appear at the most terrible time. Now he even dared to make fun of him. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen and Wen Xiren. These two men were so blunt when they spoke. Since when was this kind of thing allowed to be said out in the open? Even if Xiren had seen through them before, as long as they did not admit it, they could at least be perfunctory. Now that Di Beichen said this, wasn't that admitting it? Bailey Hongzhuang only felt a burst of heat on her face. She was so embarrassed that she did not know how to face people. Seeing Di Beichen's serious look, when Xiren also had a bitter face. He could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Miss Bailey, it seems that Di Beichen is serious now. If I can't hold on for a while, you must help me. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Wen Xiren who had a sad look on his face. Her expression was a bit embarrassed, and she did not know how to answer. Obviously, Xiren knew her and Di Beichen very well. Looking at this posture, he should be a good friend of Di Beichen. Chapter 1772. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang nod in agreement, Wen Xiren let out a sigh of relief and followed Di Beichen out. This guy is still a virgin even after holding it in for more than 10 years. Now that he finally had a chance, I messed it up. A man who is not satisfied with his desires can be very scary when he releases his anger. Sigh, I didn't check the almanac when I went out today. I have to be careful next time. Bailey Hongzhuang was speechless. Wen Xiren's words really made her speechless. Not satisfied with his desires. Virgin? Bailey Hongzhuang was confused. Where did Di Beichen get such a blabbermouth friend? Stop being so long-winded. Di Beichen's angry voice came from the front. Xiren also hurriedly followed. Bailey Hongzhuang saw this and after thinking for a moment, she also followed. Until now, she didn't have many opportunities to see Di Beichen fight. If she could see Di Beichen and Xiren fight today, it would be a very good thing. At the back of Di Beichen's palace, there was a training field. This was the place where he usually practiced his martial arts. After Bechin stood in the middle of the training field, his gaze fell on Xiren. Come, let's compare notes. Looking at Bechin's cold and gloomy face, when Xiren knew that he wouldn't have a good time. Bechin, let's talk things out. A gentleman uses his mouth and not his fists. Your precious wife is still here. Aren't you afraid that your selfish desire to make a move on a good friend of many years will make her change her view of you? As he spoke, Xiren signaled to Bechin that Bailey Hongzhuang was not far away. Bechin glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang, then looked at Xiren with eyes full of anger. My wife must also think that you are very annoying. I am helping her vent her anger. Bailey Hongzhuang had just arrived at the training field when she heard Bechin's words. She couldn't help but look at Bechin with shame and anger. Bechin was said to be unsatisfied. But now that he said this, didn't it mean that she was also unsatisfied? When Xiren was slightly stunned and couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Besides, it's been 2 years. I understand. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that it was a mistake for her to come here. Bechin didn't waste time talking nonsense with Xiren. He raised his right hand and a sharp sword appeared. He immediately attacked when Xiren. Seeing this, Xiren also took out his own weapon. It had been a long time since he had sparred with Bechin. Now that he had the chance to spar, it was good. Vigorous elemental energy exploded in an instant. Both of them were in the green realm. If Bailey Hongzhuang was not wrong, they should be in the 5th level of the green realm. Bechin and Xiren were able to reach the 5th level of the green realm at such a young age. It was obvious that both of them were extremely talented in cultivation. As the young master of the Tiangang sect, Bechin's outstanding strength was very shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang thought to herself that when Xiren might be the successor of some sect. After all, the saying, birds of a feather flock together, made sense. Those who could become good brothers with the successor of a sect might very well be of the same status. The Green Realm cultivators were extremely powerful. The moment the two of them made a move, just the surging origin energy alone was enough to make one's heart tremble. In the next moment, the two figures, one gold and one blue, quickly collided. Ding ding ding. Chapter 1773. It was as if there were 2 gusts of wind whistling in front of his eyes. Fierce and biting cold origin energy poured out in torrents, shooting out traces in the ground. Bailey Hongzhuang was a distance away from the two of them. The stronger the cultivation, the wider the range of impact. Not to mention that the two of them had similar cultivation, so it was naturally impossible to determine who was superior in a short period of time. Although the two of them fought like a raging fire, it was impossible to determine the final result for a while. However, with Bailey Hongzhuang's eyesight, she was able to determine that the one who had the upper hand in the end was still Bechin. After confirming that Bechin would obtain the final victory, Bailey Hongzhuang leisurely waited at the side for the final result. This when Xiren was so outspoken, it was good for Bechin to teach him a lesson. Bailey Hongzhuang thought naughtily. The sounds of fighting coming from Bechin's palace did not cause an uproar in Tiangang sect, because the young sect master's palace would occasionally have such battle waves. Cloud Sword sect's young sect master came to find our young sect master again, their relationship is really good. Cloud Sword sect's young sect master and our young sect master have been good friends since young. In addition, Tiangang sect and Cloud Sword sect have always been on good terms, so it's normal for their relationship to be so good. In the future, when young sect master and Cloud Sword sect's young sect master both become sect masters, I presume our relationship with Cloud Sword sect will be even closer. Bechin and Wen Xiren were good brothers who had played together since young. Any cultivator who had stayed in Tiangang sect for a period of time would know. Bechin, didn't we agree not to hit people's faces? Hey, stop. Even if I interrupted your good deed, you wouldn't go so far as to treat me like this, right? You're also choosing a lover over a friend. You and I have been friends for more than 10 years. Wen Xiren kept begging for mercy, but Bewitching did not care at all. At this moment, both of their weapons had already been put aside. Wen Xiren's neck was clamped by Bewitching's left hand, and his fist was facing Wen Xiren's face. He knew that this guy cared the most about his face. In order to let this guy remember, he would hit his face. Sister-in-law, come help me. Seeing Bewitching, Wen Xiren hurriedly. Calm. Bailey Hongzhuang also came to Bewitching and Wen Xiren's side. Previously, the two of them were fighting fiercely. She did not expect them to become so noisy now. It was really interesting. Even though it was her first time meeting Xiren, but from the interaction between Xiren and Bewitching, she knew that the two of them had a very good relationship. She did not know Bewitching's friend before. Today, she finally met one of them. She was very happy. Sister-in-law. After hearing Xiren's name, Bewitching could not help but narrow his eyes. You're really, in fact, Xiren and Bewitching had been arguing about who was the older brother and who was the younger brother since they were young. The two of them were the same age, and there was not much of a difference in months. When Xiren's birthday was naturally known, but Bewitching's birthday, when Tian brought Bewitching back, he only saw his age, but did not know the specific time. It was because of this that the two of them had been arguing about who was the older brother since they were young. Until now, they had not been able to compete. Ouch! Chapter 1774. Only to see Wen Xiren with two panda eyes, where was the elegant appearance from before? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Bewitching, he did it on purpose. Bewitching whispered in Bailey Hongzhuang's ear, who asked him to disturb my good thing. Obviously, Bewitching had a huge grudge towards this matter. Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face flushed red, but at the same time she felt it was extremely funny. She was a man, and when she saw Bewitching being so petty, it just had to be on this kind of matter. Xiren looked at Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang flirting, and the resentment in his eyes couldn't help but deepen. You two are really unrestrained. Was it easy for him? Wasn't he just curious about how Bewitching's precious wife looked like, so he specially came to take a look? Who would have thought that the timing was so unlucky? Bewitching swept a glance at Xiren, then said to Bailey Hongzhuang, Wife, this is Cloud Sword Sect's young sect leader, Wen Xiren. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang revealed an expression of understanding. Looks like her judgment was indeed correct, this man was similarly the young sect leader of a sect. Cloud Sword Sect was one of the top 10 sects, and cultivators mainly cultivated swords. This point, at that time during the assessment competition, Elder Gu had once introduced it, and she also remembered it clearly. Young sect leader 1. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke out. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's address, Wen Xiren waved his hand and said, You're Bewitching's wife, we'll all be good friends in the future, so there's no need to be so polite, just directly call me by my name. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. She couldn't help but look at Bewitching. Bewitching smiled and said, This guy will come to Tiangang's sect from time to time. There will be many opportunities to meet in the future. Just call him Xiren. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Alright, then I'll call you Xiren. Wen Xiren acted like they were close friends. Then I'll call you Hongzhuang from now on. Alright. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Although this was her first time meeting Xiren, she had a very good impression of Xiren. Just from the previous contact, she could tell that Xiren was a very easy person to get along with. Why did you come to Tiangang sect again today? After beating up Xiren, Bewitching's mood was obviously much better, so he immediately asked. Didn't I say it before? I'm here to meet your precious wife. When Xiren looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and then at Bewitching. Now that you've met her, she's really compatible with you. However, Bewitching didn't believe Xiren. I've known you for so many years, how can I not know what you're thinking? This is at most part of the reason. Did you have a fight with Ying? He and Wen Xiren had been friends for many years, so he knew Wen Xiren's affairs very well. Although Xiren was very curious to see Hong Zhuang before, this kind of thing would happen sooner or later. Wen Xiren wouldn't make a special trip. Usually, there was only one reason that could make Xiren come so far to find him, Shengguan Yingying. Seeing that Di Beichen had seen through everything, Wen Xiren couldn't help but sigh. A little fight, no problem. Sure enough. Di Beichen's lips raised a faint smile. He watched Xiren and Shengguan Yingying walk over step by step. These two people were really a pair of enemies. Bailey Hongzhuang curiously looked at Xiren and Di Beichen. Obviously, Yingying was a very important person. Chapter 1775. In my opinion, it won't be long before Yingying appears in Tiangang sect. Di Beichen smiled faintly. Whether it was Wen Xiren or Shengguan Yingying, he knew them very well. When the two of them got along together, it wouldn't be long before they quarreled. However, the speed at which they reconciled was equally astonishing. Now he was already used to it. This was the way the two of them got along. Wen Xiren raised his eyebrows and didn't speak. The two of you are really interesting. Every time you quarrel, you come to me. You treat my Tiangang sect as a refuge. Di Beichen looked at Wen Xiren helplessly. He had no intention of getting involved in these things. However, every time something happened between the two of them, they would come to Tiangang sect. When they were not married, the two of them also came to him when they quarreled. Now after they were married, they still came to him when they quarreled. He was really helpless. Looking at Di Beichen's helpless look, Wen Xiren couldn't help but say, in the future, when you and Hong Zhuang quarrel and come to me, I will take you in. Hearing this, Di Beichen directly held Bailey Hongzhuang with one hand and raised his long eyebrows. My wife and I will not be like you. Wen Xiren looked at such a proud Di Beichen and was completely speechless. Was this still the Di Beichen he knew before? The Di Beichen he knew before was never like this. He couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, after a man had a wife, he would change his face. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help laughing. The conversation between the two men was also very funny. This was the affection that grew up together. No matter how the other party ridiculed and sarcastic, it still couldn't hurt the affection between them. You'd better stay in your own room. When Yingying comes, you solve it yourself. Di Beichen glanced at Wen Xiren indifferently. On this issue, he really couldn't help. Wen Xiren pondered for a moment when he heard this, and then he could only sigh. He understood that Di Beichen had no idea how to deal with this. Wen Xiren was obviously not in a good mood. After messing around for a while, he went back to his room to rest. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang also went back to the cultivation room together. At this moment, after entering the cultivation room, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think of the charming scene from before, and two red clouds once again appeared on her face. After Di Beichen noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's rosy face, he couldn't help but smile. Wife, what are you thinking about? No, nothing. Under Di Beichen's pair of eyes that could see through people's hearts, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that she had nowhere to hide. How about we continue what we didn't finish just now? Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang teasingly, his tone was very ambiguous. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but reach out and hit Di Beichen. You're shameless. Xiren is not far away. As long as we don't look for him now, he won't dare to disturb us. Di Beichen approached Bailey Hongzhuang, his smile was full of ambiguity and teasing. Bailey Hongzhuang knew that she was no match for Di Beichen in this aspect, so she didn't continue to stay on this topic. Who is Yingying? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Shengguan Yingying, she is Xiren's wife. The two of them are childhood sweethearts. We have known each other for many years. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. Chapter 1776. There's a conflict between them. Should we help mediate it? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen. Xiren no longer stayed in Cloud Sword's sect and ran to Tiangang's sect. Presumably, the conflict was not small. Since they were Di Beichen's good friends, it would be great if there was a chance to help mediate it. Di Beichen looked at his wife's kind appearance, and his deep eyes were filled with gentleness. His wife had always been kind. It was only when facing some enemies that she was decisive and ruthless. Hong Zhuang had always been very harmonious with her friends. Don't worry about them. They get along like this. After so many years, they have long been used to it. Not only them, even I, as a spectator, have been used to it. The low and magnetic voice was filled with helplessness and lamentation. These two guys really couldn't stop at any time. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were still flickering with some doubts, Di Beichen smiled and immediately explained. When I was a few years old, I already knew Xiren and Yingying. They were engaged since they were young. The two of them have always quarreled every 5 days and had a small quarrel every 3 days. Xiren couldn't win against Yingying at all. Therefore, every time he couldn't win against her, he would come to my place. Yingying would also chase after him. In the past, before they were married, Yingying had always followed behind Xiren like a little tail. However, the two of them are not people who hold grudges. Even if they quarrel fiercely at this moment, they would become glued to each other in a while. Therefore, they often startled the people around them, but the two of them acted as if nothing had happened. I'm already used to it. You will also get used to it in the future. Don't worry about it. It will be fine in 2 days. Seeing that Di Beichen was full of confidence as if he was used to it, Bailey Hongzhuang also smiled and nodded. Obviously, Xiren and Shengguan Yingying were quarrelsome lovers. When they were together, they could not help but quarrel. But once they were separated, they would miss each other very much. This kind of feeling was also a rare and precious kind of love. No matter how much they quarreled, the other party would always be in their hearts. I understand. Although Xiren looked gentle and refined, he spoke without thinking. It was normal for Yingying to be at odds with him. She was curious about what Yingying looked like. By the way, Beichen, I haven't finished what I wanted to tell you. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but speak up. What she wanted to tell Di Beichen the most was about the primordial chaos ring. The door of darkness in the chaos ring would be of great help to their cultivation. After she told Di Beichen about this, they would be able to cultivate in the door of darkness together. Having more time was a good thing for any cultivator. This way, they would be able to do more things. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows. His voice was hoarse and seductive. We haven't finished what we wanted to do. Hearing Di Beichen's seductive voice, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but recall the scene from before. She immediately glared fiercely at Di Beichen. Be serious. This guy was deliberately saying these words that made her unable to resist. Chapter 1777. My wife, please speak. Your husband is listening. Di Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand and sat down. He knew that Hongzhuang must have something very serious to tell him. Previously, when Hongzhuang had told him about her time travel, he was still very shocked. However, this did not change anything and he did not take it to heart. He had no idea what kind of person Bailey Hongzhuang was in the past. He had never met her, much less liked her. When he first met Bailey Hongzhuang, she was already his wife's soul. Therefore, he had always loved his wife. There was no problem with that. Because of this, he naturally did not mind. On the contrary, he felt very fortunate. His wife had traveled through 1,000 years to find him. Beichen, actually, the reason why I had traveled through time was because of a divine weapon. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen's expression. When he heard the two words, divine weapon, Di Beichen's expression changed and was now filled with shock. Divine weapon. Di Beichen's deep eyes were filled with shock. Divine weapons existed only in legends and had heaven-defying abilities. In reality, even though he had heard of divine weapons, he had never seen one before. Come to think of it, even the various sects and clans do not have divine weapons. Yet now, his wife was telling him that she had traveled through time because of a divine weapon. Bailey Hongzhuang gently nodded. I've already dripped my blood on it and that divine weapon has merged into my body. Originally, she had always worn the chaos ring on her finger. However, the chaos ring was far too valuable and she had always been worried that she would lose it. Then, one day, after she had fallen asleep, the chaos ring had disappeared. At the time, she was shocked. Then, she realized that the chaos ring had merged with her and existed in her mind. She was relieved. This was, without a doubt, the best result. This way, she wouldn't have to worry about losing the chaos ring. Thinking back to when she first contracted with the chaos ring, she was still a little unaccustomed to all of this. As the time of the contract grew longer and longer, she and the chaos ring became more and more compatible. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's serious expression, Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking about how Di Beichen would react, Di Beichen's face suddenly became serious. His hands tightly grasped Bailey Hongzhuang's hands. Wife, divine artifacts are treasures that only exist in legends. Since you were able to obtain it, it means that your destiny is extraordinary. You mustn't tell anyone about this. If someone with evil intentions hears about it, you might get yourself killed. Di Beichen's eyes could not hide his nervousness and worry. Any cultivator who possessed a treasure like this would definitely keep their mouths shut and not talk about it. Now, his wife had actually told him about this. It was fine if she told him, but if she told anyone else and this news spread, there would be no peace. An ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. This kind of thing happened quite frequently in the Xingxian continent. Therefore, no one who had obtained a treasure dared to make it public. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw Di Beichen's nervous look, her heart could not help but fill with a thick warmth. She knew that Beichen was someone she could trust. Even a divine weapon as amazing as it was still unable to defeat the love between them. Chapter 1778. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was not alert at all and was instead smiling very happily, Di Beichen could not help but frown his good-looking eyebrows. Do you take what I said to heart? As the young sect master of Tiangang sect, he had seen a lot of the world. Not to mention a divine weapon, even a better weapon would cause a fight. How could he not worry when he saw Hongzhuang's indifferent look? If the news of the divine weapon was spread, he was afraid that he could only take Hongzhuang and flee. After all, for such a treasure, he was afraid that the old fellows of various sects and families would have to come forward. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly hugged Di Beichen. Her face leaned on Di Beichen's chest, and the corners of her lips were filled with a happy and relieved smile. Beichen, I have never told this news to anyone. I just wanted to tell this news to you. Di Beichen, who was originally worried, stiffened slightly after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words. In the next second, his eyes became increasingly gentle. Since his wife had not told this news to anyone for so long, it meant that his wife also knew the importance of this divine weapon. However, his wife chose to tell this news to him, which proved that his wife had extraordinary trust in him. This was tantamount to putting her life in his hands. His wife was gambling that the feelings between them were trustworthy. Di Beichen could not help but feel touched. If his wife lost the bet, then she would lose her life. It was enough to see how deep his wife's feelings for him were. He would not let his wife lose. Di Beichen hugged Bailey Hongzhuang with both hands. He only felt that their hearts were closer than before. Wife, what kind of life did you live before? Di Beichen looked curiously at Bailey Hongzhuang. He was also curious about his wife's previous life. In the past, he thought that he knew Heng Zhuang very well. Now, he realized that the life he knew before was not the real life of Heng Zhuang at all. He wanted to know everything about Heng Zhuang. In the past, he did not participate in Heng Zhuang's life, but he could understand. As for the future, he would always be in Heng Zhuang's life. I used to be the head of the Bailey family. Bailey Heng Zhuang smiled. Now that there was someone who could listen to her talk about her previous life, she really felt very happy. This kind of thing had always been suppressed in her heart. She did not even have a person to share it with. After a long time, it was inevitable to feel a little depressed. If she told this news to others, they would think that she had gone crazy. Now that the person closest to her had come to listen to her, there was an indescribable satisfaction in her heart. Hearing Bailey Heng Zhuang's words, Di Beichen understood that the Bailey family she was talking about was a real big family. At this moment, Di Beichen finally understood why Heng Zhuang had such an intimidating aura. This kind of aura appearing on the younger generation was very shocking. Now that he knew that Heng Zhuang was actually the head of an aristocratic family in her previous life, he also understood. As long as one was in power, their aura was far from what ordinary people could compare to. Even if Heng Zhuang had transmigrated, her soul was still there, so her aura was still there. Beichen, is there no longer a Bailey family in the Xingxian continent? Bailey Heng Zhuang could not help but raise her head to look at Di Beichen, her eyes flashing with hope. Chapter 1779. Even if things had changed 1,000 years later and the Bailey family would no longer remember anything about her, she still hoped that the Bailey family could continue to pass on. Di Beichen saw the hope and anticipation in Bailey Heng Zhuang's eyes and felt a little sorry for her. He did not want to disappoint Heng Zhuang, but he really did not know that the Bailey family existed in the Xingxian continent. Seeing Di Beichen's hesitant and sorry look, Bailey Heng Zhuang's heart gradually sank. It seemed that in the course of 1,000 years, the Bailey family had disappeared into the long river of history. Back when she was the head of the Bailey family had been passed on for hundreds of years and its position had always been very stable. Now that she had become Bailey Heng Zhuang 1,000 years later, she really hoped that the Bailey family would continue to exist. She did not expect that in the end, she would not be able to see the Bailey family again. Wife, don't be sad. Di Beichen gently stroked Bailey Heng Zhuang's back. As the head of the Bailey family in her past life, needless to say, her feelings for the Bailey family must be very deep. Back then, she had left the Bailey family because of an accident. Now, she naturally hoped that she would have the chance to see them again. Unfortunately, the world was unpredictable. Although the foundation of an aristocratic family was very shocking and the average person could not shake it. However, no one knew what would happen after Xing recovered. Sometimes, some unexpected situations would occur and some forces would completely disappear. Hearing Di Beichen's consolation, Bailey Heng Zhuang nodded slightly. She had always had a trace of hope in her heart, but she also knew that the possibility of this was not very high. Back then, when she had suddenly fallen, it must have been a great blow to the Bailey family. At that time, the Bailey family's foundation was very strong and ordinary aristocratic families were no match for them. And because of their strength, they had many opponents. The Bailey family had always been eyeing them covetously. If there were any problems, they would not miss the opportunity to strike. Obviously, her sudden fall was an opportunity that their opponents could create. Bailey Heng Zhuang did not dare to continue thinking. If the disappearance of the Bailey family was really related to her fall, then she would really be a sinner. She didn't want such a thing to happen, but she couldn't help but feel that the possibility of it happening was very high. A feeling of sadness spread in her heart. All this time, she had only hoped that she could lead the Bailey family to become stronger and stronger. She had never thought that the Bailey family would one day suffer because of her. Looking at Bailey Heng Zhuang's pale face, Di Beichen understood Bailey Heng Zhuang's thoughts and couldn't help but feel distressed. Wife, none of this has anything to do with you. Don't think too much about it. However, such words obviously did not have much effect on Bailey Hongzhuang. I'm just a little sad. After all, it's the family that I've lived in for so many years. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile, but that smile did not reach her eyes. The group of old men in the family must have been unable to accept the news of her fall. She knew these old men very well. Usually, when they spoke, it was as if they couldn't wait to chase you away, but in fact, they were very concerned about her. They just didn't show it because of their pride. Chapter 1780. My dear wife, what's the use of the divine weapon that you've obtained? I've heard that divine weapons have always been extraordinary and their uses far exceed the expectations of ordinary people. Beichen's deep and enchanting eyes were filled with astonishment. He had never paid much attention to this kind of existence that only existed in legends. Most of the time, he even felt that it didn't exist at all. Now that Hongzhuang was clearly able to help him solve his doubts, he naturally wanted to know more about it. Seeing that Beichen had a rare look of confusion, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and explained. The use of the divine weapon is also very astonishing. Before I obtained the Chaos Ring, I had never thought that the divine weapon would have such an incredible use. Back then, after I had dripped my blood on the divine weapon to become its master, the divine weapon's power was simply too astonishing and caused an energy fluctuation. As a result, my physical body had turned into nothingness. If it weren't for the Chaos Ring, I wouldn't have been able to become Bailey Hongzhuang today. Since she had already told Beichen about the Chaos Ring, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't hide anything and immediately told Beichen everything about the Chaos Ring. The more Beichen listened to Bailey Hongzhuang, the more astonished he became. This was simply too astonishing. If it weren't for Hongzhuang's description, he wouldn't have been able to imagine it at all. You mean to say that Xiao He and Xiao Bai were originally the demonic beasts in the Chaos Ring? Beichen raised his voice and his handsome face was filled with astonishment. All this time, he had never understood what kind of demonic beasts Xiao He and Xiao Bai were. He had understood many demonic beasts and he even had some understanding of the beast kings. However, he really couldn't recognize existences like Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Yes, ever since I transmigrated, Xiao He and Xiao Bai have been accompanying me. Although the two little fellows were usually gluttons, they were still very concerned about her. Then, does the fact that you can contract 3 contracted beasts have something to do with the Chaos Ring? Beichen immediately thought of this possibility. Since Xiao He and Xiao Bai were both demonic beasts from the Chaos Ring, and they had both recognized Bailey Hongzhuang as their master, it was obvious that this had something to do with the Chaos Ring. Yes. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Beichen was really smart. She only said part of it, but Beichen had already guessed the latter part. So you learned your inscription technique in the Chaos Ring. I was wondering who you learned your inscription technique from. Beichen chuckled. He had always been amazed by Hongzhuang's talent in medicine, alchemy, and inscription techniques. However, he had never understood when Hongzhuang had learned them. As early as when he was in Fengbo country, he had already known that Hongzhuang was skilled in medicine and alchemy. However, he had never heard Hongzhuang say that she knew inscription techniques. It hadn't been long since Hongzhuang had left for the Azure Water School and he had gone to find Hongzhuang. After that, he had always been by Hongzhuang's side. However, Hongzhuang had suddenly mastered the inscription technique, and she did not have any master by her side. This was too unbelievable. It wasn't until this moment that he completely understood. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. She thought that Beichen must be confused about her past changes. Chapter 1781. I don't know when Yingying will come today, and when Xiren may come to find us at any time, so we can't go to the door of darkness for the time being. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. She originally planned to go to the Door of Darkness to cultivate with Di Beichen today, but now it was obviously impossible. It took 3 days to enter the Door of Darkness, which was equivalent to half a day in the outside world. Di Beichen nodded. I estimate that Yingying will come in the afternoon. Whenever Xiren disappears, Yingying will come directly to the Tiangang sect, and Xiren will be here every time. Then let's cultivate here, and wait for Yingying to come. Around evening, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, who were cultivating, heard a voice coming from above. Beichen, did Xiren come to you again? As the voice fell, the figure was ready to enter the cultivation room. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but find it funny. Shangguan Yingying and Wen Xiren were indeed a match made in heaven, and the way they appeared was exactly the same. It seemed that these two people really knew Di Beichen's palace very well. Di Beichen didn't answer, but still sat in the same place, waiting for Shangguan Yingying to come down. Not long after, a woman in a light yellow dress appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. The woman's appearance was dignified and delicate, and her every move revealed the aura of nobility, but the anger between her eyebrows was very obvious, and there was quite a bit of indignation. Don't you know where Xiren usually is? Di Beichen looked at Shangguan Yingying in front of him, and smiled faintly. You can go directly to him. When Shangguan Yingying saw Bailey Hongzhuang, her eyes couldn't help but light up, and the anger between her eyebrows instantly dissipated into nothingness, and turned into thick excitement. You are Hongzhuang, right? Although it was a question, what Shangguan Yingying said was a statement. She had known Di Beichen for so many years, but she had never seen Di Beichen so close to any woman. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were just sitting to the side, her woman's intuition told her that they were very close. In fact, Di Beichen had never brought another woman to the cultivation room. At first, Di Beichen was the only one in the cultivation room. It was only because Xiren was always acting shamelessly that he followed Di Beichen into the cultivation room. She had been with Xiren since she was young, so she was already used to it. Therefore, after Xiren entered the cultivation room, she followed closely behind. Even though Han Xiling had grown up with Di Beichen since she was a child, she had never been inside. Just from this point, she could tell that the woman in front of her was different in Di Beichen's heart. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. Yingying, it's nice to meet you. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang already knew who she was, Shangguan Yingying's eyes were filled with a touch of surprise. At the same time, she said with a smile, since I knew you, I have always wanted to meet you. I didn't expect to finally meet you today. I'm very happy that you can take in Di Beichen, this evildoer. In the future, Xiren and I don't have to worry about him being alone. When these words came out, Di Beichen's face couldn't help but darken. What did she mean by worrying about him being alone? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that Xiren and Shangguan Yingying were really worried about his marriage. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.